Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to this live After Stangs Show on this Saturday night as SMU defeats Missouri State on the road, 28-10. I am Billy Embody. We have full post-game reaction now as we just got done hearing from Rhett Lashley. You'll hear some of that on this post-game show as the band for Missouri State started playing in the background. So we'll break down what the game meant for SMU, all the takeaways, and what Rhett Lashley said, of course, on after the fact when the band got done playing. But we'll do all that and more on this edition of the After Stangs Show, presented by our friends at Northwest Insurance Agency.
When you clock in every day, there's always that chance that something can happen. You don't know when, where, or how, but accidents are inevitable. As a business owner, you don't want to be left holding the bag whether something happens to an employee or customer. General liability insurance covers everything from a slip or fall all the way down to a paper cut. At Northwest Insurance Agency, we will get you any necessary coverage that pertains to your field. So get covered under the sombrero by calling 855-88-75656 or visit us at nwagencies.com.
This is the On the Pony Express podcast, part of the On3 network. Check out all the SMU coverage you need at ontheponyexpress.com. Now, here's your host, Billy Embody.
1, 2, 3, let me go.
Yeah, that's right. A really interesting game in Springfield, Missouri for the Mustangs. One that I can tell you, I hope this team never has to go through again with the scheduling situation that they have had to go through to over the last couple of years with the league changes, but they get past it. And look, it was not pretty. We're going to break a lot of that down on the post-game show because there's a lot that I think needs to be said about this team, where it is right now. And most of it doesn't necessarily mean that they can't go out and beat TCU next week either. And that's kind of where college football is right now. But before we get into that, I want to say something right off the bat, and not to go back-to-back on a sponsor to open, but because SMU won, Mignon in Plano on Sunday is offering you, the On the Pony Express listener or subscriber, free dessert when you go in for brunch or dinner. Mention On the Pony Express and that the Mustangs won and that you'd like your free dessert. So Nick Nator, former SMU offensive lineman, and his family have run the restaurant for decades now. Beautiful, beautiful scene there in Plano, right on the water. As you can see there, a little patio. I think for me, the bar is just the way to go too. You know, come in there. They got the champagne on ice ready to go. And it really sets the table, so to speak, for an incredible experience. So they are offering free dessert on Sundays for those of you who mention On the Pony Express and celebrate a Mustang win with our friends at Mignon. So really appreciate them doing that. Might have to take them up on that on Sunday because that game had a little bit of everything for SMU fans, and you need to feel good somehow about this team. Have a little dessert on our friends at Mignon on Sunday. So let's dive on in here, and I will start out because I have so many different ways that I want to talk about this game, and we'll have a lot of time to break this down. And if you asked me before the season if I would be sitting here after East Texas A&M and after Missouri State with so many takeaways, I would have called you crazy. You know, this was a team with a returning quarterback. This was a team that had enough pieces coming back, had an offensive line coming back that they feel like they had upgraded and added to. And that, for the most part, SMU would take care of business. Now, Rhett Lashley's teams, for the most part, save for Houston Christian last year in their second game, remember, not their first, have really kind of, you know, at times been a little slower starting against some of these teams that are very clearly at a lower level than the Mustangs are. And they, at times, have a tendency to play to their competition. And at the same time, this particular team, is dealing with a lot. You had Alexander Kilgore and Zakai Barker miss games again, although I believe Kilgore was available at least. I know he warmed up. But you had Jordan Hudson missing. You had Logan Parr get banged up against Baylor. He was playing through some things today. You had Isaiah Smith, who was suspended for the first half of this game. You had just kind of a lot of things going on with this team as it is trying to find its footing that is making it difficult for them to find their footing. And at the same time, East Texas A&M, Missouri State, these are two teams that if you watch the second half against both teams, you would say obviously SMU, very much so took care of business. SMU held Missouri State scoreless for the last three quarters. They held them 0 for on third downs. I believe it was 0 for 12 maybe or 17. It was kind of a 0 for 11. So wrong on both accounts. But it was a game that first quarter was probably the worst first quarter of the Rhett Lashley era. And I say that not looking back at every single first quarter, but it sure felt like it. On the road or not, that felt like probably the worst first quarter relative to the opponent in particular of the Rhett Lashley era. You opened with 4 straight pass plays and you hit one right off the bat. You're moving, and then 3 straight passes, one ending in an interception, thrown into double coverage by your veteran quarterback. Can't happen. And then you have the next drive where Romello Brinson, he's running, he's rolling, he's making a big play, fumbles the football. Might have been 2 drives after that. But yeah, it was back-to-back drives. So you have that start offensively. Not great. And on top of that, you weren't really running the football too much at all. And defense was put in poor situations. All 10 of Missouri State's points were off of turnovers, I believe. Maybe not. The touchdown might not have been, but you have just a lot going wrong in the first quarter. And it didn't look like, for a second, it really didn't look like it was going to necessarily get better. I mean, that's how it felt watching on TV. That's how it looked on the stat sheet. Like, you saw SMU making plays. You saw them moving the football. I mean, Kevin Jennings, at the half had almost 200 yards passing, I think. Maybe he had 200 yards in the first half. Let's see. It was, first half he had 236 yards passing. You would take that before the game, right? And at the end of the day, SMU just was really hurting itself, I felt like, in key situations with penalties. And they just looked like a team that was letting the previous game beat themselves again. Because at that point, they were down 10-0. Early on, they were down 10-0 at the end of the first quarter. And they were able to score 14 unanswered in the first half, en route to going on to score 28 total unanswered and winning the game. But man, this is a imperfect team right now that has a lot of pieces that look promising, but where SMU is not coming together to meet each other as a team halfway is they're not playing complementary football at the same time. You might get a quarter where, the defense plays really well, or the last 3 quarters of this game, but you saw the offense do this or do that, or there's penalties and they're just setting back drives. Now, Rhett Lashley talked about it in the postgame show, or the postgame press conference, where in that early going, they were running their base offense. Like, they were keeping it simple. And you could tell, like, I think, there was a couple of third down calls that I know there was one that Rhett Lashley called a timeout, and they came out and they kind of just ran a, straight ahead run play. So I don't know if there was something wrong, or if they, just kind of really felt like they could just run it, which against a team like this, I don't mind that. But, calling a timeout and coming out with that is kind of, it was, maybe it was a good call by Missouri State against it. I'm not sure. But you had plenty of situations in this game where it just felt like SMU was not playing hard enough. And then in the second half, I really felt like SMU turned it on and they were fine. They really were. I mean, Missouri State had opportunities to make some plays to make it interesting. But at the end of the day, they were not able to do anything at all. And there were times when SMU could have, gotten a little bit of a helping hand. I mean, 2 targeting calls. I don't know if I've seen 2 targeting calls struck down at once, but SMU really hadn't gotten a kind of a helping hand in that situation, they could have, Missouri State had gotten a couple of calls. I mean, SMU gave them plenty. I mean, look at the final count on penalties here. 12 penalties for 130 yards. And, Dean Rawlsky went and covered this game for us at On the Pony Express in person. I watched from home, but I plan on asking Rhett Lashley on Tuesday about the penalties because, yes, they've cleaned them up, against East Texas A&M in the second half. Against Baylor, I really don't feel like they were an issue to an extent, but you still have some of these games where you've got to find ways to clean that up, because this is a team that so far this season does not look like it's going to be able to overcome penalties like SMU was last year. Like when they hit league play, and I say this on a day that Clemson lost to Georgia Tech, and Clemson looks one-dimensional and lost, that you're not going to be able to commit this many penalties. I mean, between holdings and personal fouls on Savion Byrd, hands to the face, there's so many different pieces to this game that, are just concerning. And I don't know where to go with the penalties. Like, I almost don't know why I'm going to ask that question, because I think I'm going to get, you got to clean it up. You can't do that. But how do you fix that? Because I think there were a lot of things about today's game that for me felt like SMU was most definitely playing down to their opponent. And then on top of that, we're really in certain situations, like actually looking like they were not kind of meant to like, I don't know, like Missouri State was meant to be playing up a level, like an AAC team. I think some of the passing plays, Jacob Clark, Rockwell Native, by the way, 275 yards passing. He threw 3 interceptions. SMU ended up getting the best of him, and they got after him, ended up getting 5 sacks. The defensive line, I felt like, really had a good game overall. I think that this Missouri State staff is a pretty good, lower level FBS school type of staff where they can kind of, put things together, and they've got some guys that are just slippery and they can do some fun things as far as the receiving core. And they were able to find, holes in this SMU secondary to take advantage. And I feel like, SMU was able to dial some things up, and they're really trying to win this game, of course, and not show TCU much. But man, Scott Simons really had to kind of dial up some pressures and things like that, and they end up figuring it out. The defensive line holds Missouri State to 2 yards a carry, so you're doing fine there. That's where you want to be. That's the good stuff, right? But the secondary is still got to figure out some things, and I just don't know how it's going to look against TCU. Is this a team that next week, because you were able to rest Zakai Barker and Alexander Kilgore, are you going to get them back and they're going to be that boost kind of in that middle, that second level of that defense? And it's going to help your drops. It's going to help your zones. It's going to help, being able to kind of lock down coverage a little bit more. Or is it not a linebacker thing? And it is an issue with the secondary and trying to defend some of these passing attacks. Now I'll say this, if SMU is able to hold TCU to a similar type of performance rushing the football, I think it's going to play in SMU's favor. I mean, we kind of saw that against Baylor. Baylor ran the football, ended up running it a little bit better than it kind of felt like, especially late. They, as Rhett Lashley said last week, and they showed on that last drive, Baylor was able to hit some runs that really, put them in position to win that game. But for by and large, that game last week, SMU was not was able to slow down Baylor's rushing attack. And I think it's really important to know that, for you guys out there listening, if SMU comes up with a similar level of showing defensively against the run against TCU, they can win that game defensively. They can. Because when you force these teams to pass and pass and pass, you get into the situation where SMU was up 38-24 with 6 minutes to go, because you're making teams one-dimensional. And that's where you can force some turnovers. You can make some things happen. Or teams have to be aggressive, and they've got to go for it on fourth down. You can get stops. And guess what? TCU right now playing Abilene Christian, I think it's safe to say SMU is their first test, regardless of what you think about how SMU has played this year. This is an SMU team that did, man, almost beat Baylor. It's not like they were getting boat raced at home. They were on the cusp of beating Baylor. And Josh Hoover is a good quarterback. Don't get me wrong. I think Sawyer Robertson's better. It's my opinion. TCU right now, by the way, sitting up 21-0 on Abilene Christian with 2 minutes to go in the second quarter. I mean, not great. So maybe looking ahead over there in Fort Worth too. So everybody is going to find out, I think, what the real SMU is next week. Right? Is it the team that jumped out on Baylor and is going to be pissed off about people like me saying this team is, look this, look that over the first 3 weeks of the season? Or is it the team that, played the way it did in the final minutes that would get you beat 75% of the weeks across the remaining schedule that they have? That's where this team has to stand up and decide what they want to be. And I think for me, watching this game at Missouri State was probably disappointing in terms of if you were watching this game as an SMU fan, you wanted this team to come out and kind of leave no doubt, start strong, coast to a win, get Kevin Jennings out of there, get a lot of these starters out of there, and Ty Hawkins plays the whole fourth quarter. Instead, you force a ball over the middle, interception. Romello Brinson, poor ball security, changing hands while he's running. He literally fumbles it himself, goes right to a Missouri State player. And Missouri State takes advantage because guess what? They strap it up. They're ready to go. They want to win. They want to make plays too. First home game for an FBS team. Really cool moment for them. Great crowd. Art Haynes, SMU alum, calling his final game. A lot of emotion up there. And you could see SMU is the better athletic team and has the athletes that just Missouri State doesn't have. But when you make mistakes, you are going to have dogfights. I mean, that's just the reality. The way SMU was so good last year was jumping out on opponents and scoring on that first drive and boom, saying it's on. You got to come chase us the entire game. That allows the defense to play a certain way. That allows the offense to get some confidence. All of those things. We've not seen that this year just yet. In a way, I mean, like SMU jumped out on Baylor. That's great. Like that was what SMU was. That's what SMU was built on last year. But this year's team just couldn't finish. So that type of a showing for the first 3 quarters against TCU that they showed against Baylor, that can beat TCU. The problem with this team right now, in a sense, is you don't know what team you're going to get. Last year, you could look at, okay, first game was Nevada on the road, weird situation. You come home cooking, everything's great. You roll Houston Christian. BYU, you play 30-year-olds. You're going through it at the quarterback position. Turnovers. All of those things. It was pretty easy to diagnose. Right now, there are a lot of different things that aren't clicking at the same time for SMU. But man, if this staff gets them to click, they're going to be dangerous. Because you could see it. You could see it when Kevin Jennings is throwing the football to Romello Brinson and Jalen Cooper and TJ Harden's hitting it up the middle. I mean, TJ Harden averaged 6.4 yards per carry. Chris Johnson Jr., 7.7. Even Jermico Green, 4.1. Not bad. Like those things you can see offensively how good they can be. And defensively, there are moments so far this season where you could see some of that swarm mentality. They haven't had it that much, though. So there's a lot to figure out for this coaching staff to get everything clicking at once. And that's the interesting piece. So before we go to Rhett Lashley, and I'm sorry for kind of ranting, and I feel like it's been a little all over the place, but it's kind of similar to this team. You feel like it is a little all over the place right now. Before we go to Rhett Lashley, I do want to remind you guys about our friends at StatusJet. StatusJet.com. Make sure now that this game is done, you get your plans for Clemson on the books. You reach out to StatusJet and say, hey, David Henry, how can we get to Clemson? What's the plan? How should I do it? They'll line up your trip for you and get it at that level that you would expect an elite experience to look like. They can get you transportation on the ground. They can get you hotel accommodations. They can help you plan every aspect of your trip. Mention on the Pony Express and get a discount on your round trip flight. So go to statusjet.com, check out your options, and reach out to them for more information and get your game day trip planned with StatusJet. Okay, we'll go to Rhett Lashley here. Got them all queued up. Should be ready to go. It's not great audio because it's not our usual quiet little room. It's outside, but we'll give you the first like minute 50 or so, and then the band starts playing, and you'll have to read the rest of it at ontheponyexpress.com. So subscribe for just $1, but it is kind of tough to listen to overall with the band striking up. So without any further ado, we go to SMU head coach Rhett Lashley on the After Stangs postgame show. Here we go.
To win 2-1, I think that's 10 straight on the road in the regular season, so it's always good to get a road win. Really sloppy most of the game offensively, but definitely early in the first quarter, a few minutes into the second quarter. Picked it up in the second quarter, and then third quarter, not to start wanted, but then picked it up a little. But credit our defense, man. Gave up 3 points on the first turnover. They gave up the one touchdown drive, and other than that, we're pretty good. Held them to 50 yards rushing, 0-13 on third and fourth down. Really proud of them. A lot of sacks late. We pressured more, but didn't have to every time. They just did a nice job. You get down 10-0 on the road, a lot of momentum, and they never score again. Gave us a chance to just slowly get back in the game and take control of the game. So we got to be a lot better next week, but we got to win, and we're excited to be going home with a win.
You mentioned the start, sloppy, out of sorts, whatever you want to call it, and then right before the end of the first half, you got the 2 scoring drives to take the lead. What changed in those last few minutes of the second half?
We just settled down and started playing. We were running basic plays early in the game, and everybody was going to think about the interception or Romelo's fumble, but we're running base plays and not blocking the defensive tackle or not blocking the defensive end with our tight end, or quarterbacks taking a sack out of the pocket. Just a lot of really uncharacteristic, poor execution is what I would say. I think we weren't playing hard, and poor execution. Poor execution is going to lead to a holding penalty, a hands to the face penalty. I love the fact we're trying to be physical, but you can't crack block anymore. You go in and knock a guy out, they're going to call a penalty on you. So you get 10, 15-yard penalties, it's hard for anybody to maintain a drive. And so first 2 drives, it was turnovers. After that, it was penalties, and we just kind of kept getting in our own way. And not good football.
There were multiple times throughout the game where players were slipping pre-game. It was very hot on the field. Does this feel like the example and the reason why you guys switched to grass?
I think so. And look, I talked to Ryan before the game. They were slipping some too, I think, but they at least practice out here. This is their first game on this turf. It's new. It's the new field turf that it's a lot softer than the old turf. It doesn't have the black rubber fibers, so it's supposed to be better long term. But early on, as in like the first year you have it, it's known to be really slippery. And as you can see, it was a slip and slide. Running back slipping, receivers slipping, and so. Obviously that makes guys play tentative a little bit, but that doesn't have anything to do with some of the sloppy execution. But our guys, by halftime, I felt like we were settling in on how the surface played, and hopefully we didn't lose anybody too seriously because of it. And we're both playing on the same surface, so but it's just the uniqueness of this kind of new field turf.
And so that's all Rhett Lashley, not all he had to say, but before the band, people start throwing their computers or phones or whatever. And Brandon in the comments, Missouri State was slipping a little bit too. I know SMU kind of had the overall look of it or whatever, but Missouri State was slipping too. Romello made a couple guys look silly out there at times. So I think just SMU fans are more cognizant of it because I think athletically SMU's players are kind of that much better that they shouldn't be slipping. But it was an interesting explanation from Rhett Lashley. Actually, I learned something. So that, is the hard-hitting journalism you get. But injury-wise, I know Rhett Lashley kind of talked about it, as far as not losing many guys, but to kind of run you down a couple guys that we're going to keep an eye on. Kevin Jennings was fine at the end of the game. Cramps is what Rhett Lashley said and the broadcast said, and he was drinking pickle juice and all of that stuff. But, watching the end of the game unfold, and let me be very clear about this. I don't care about redshirting Ty Hawkins in a sense, because if Ty Hawkins is here 4 years, if you add it up, he's either if he's that good that he's, playing, like if Kevin's still here next year and he should be or whatever, he could redshirt next year, which somebody made a great point on the board. But I'm a huge believer of why play somebody if it's not going to be meaningful. And that was kind of the whole thing about East Texas A&M was, man, you needed him to kind of use that game as his get a feel for college football. And now maybe this is a part of, I can't imagine him taking one snap as a part of the plan. Don't get me wrong. But to literally have him come in and get a feel for the game, because it's different. I mean, I like something that I never did was take a snap in an actual game. But I could tell you, by the time I was done with scout team at the end of the year, it was very, very different than playing high school football. And the next thing is playing in a game. And for Ty Hawkins, he had never done that until East Texas A&M. So it was important for him to get in there. He didn't do anything. He handed the ball off for the most part. But to put Ty Hawkins in for basically one play, maybe two, was kind of silly when you have Derek McFall, who played quarterback in high school. You could direct snap it to him. You're up 18 points with under a minute to go. Everybody had kind of, taken a knee situation. You're literally snapping it. Put Romello in there because he's tall. At least, if you're worried about it getting snapped over his head, all those things. But I was really surprised that they played Ty Hawkins in the situation that they did, and that they burned a game on him. So I'm not going to spend too much time on it because I really do want to ask Rhett about it and just see kind of what if Kevin Jennings exits and they just were like, you know what, we're not really necessarily concerned about the 4-game count because we think he's going to go over or could go over or what have you, then let's just put him in. It's not a big deal. Then that's fine. But man, one snap to burn a game where you could have an extra one down the stretch, was a little. I was just a little surprised about that overall from SMU kind of putting him in there and allowing him to burn a game. So we shall see. As far as people talking about penalties, this is a good point in the chat, but I wanted to look it up right now. TCU is 90th in penalty yards per game, and SMU is 111th. So we could see another good crew of yellow flags out there on the field next week, unless SMU cleans it up or TCU cleans it up. So we'll see. But look, let me run down a couple things here and then get you out of here because I feel like I'm just at this point kind of burning time. But Jacob Clark throws 3 interceptions. I think it was really important in the grand scheme of things for SMU to get a few interceptions under its belt and to grab them when it's Jalen Davis-Robinson in the end zone, who has taken his lumps this year, but was SMU's leading tackler today. Isaiah Wacobia grabbing one, really should have had 2. And then you had Speedy Nettles grabbing another one, great tip play by Brandon Booker there. I think that's important because there are things that you can replicate and things you can't replicate with teams going and playing another team, right? Like SMU got after the quarterback today. It helped force 3 turnovers. It helped force 3 interceptions. That's something that you can build off of. And again, Isaiah Smith was sitting out. He was suspended and, was able to, find ways to pressure and get after it. And it's not, it's not this incredible offensive line that you're facing, but it's important that you build that type of confidence after a game where you could not get any pressure at all. And so I thought that was really important from the defensive side of things. I thought once again, you saw Ahmad Moses, I thought had a really good game. I know he was in coverage on their touchdown, but he has been stellar, I feel like, for this entire season for the most part, in a secondary that hasn't had too much of a bright spot. Isaiah Wacobia kind of was up and down again, had the interception, should have had 2, also had a couple of missed tackles and again was just kind of just miss some opportunities. He's always around the ball, so it's one of those things where you're going to get those chances. But that was kind of the couple guys that stood out to me in particular. But I think when you go back and you watch this game, the interior pass rush of Jeffrey Embo was a nice thing to see. He ended up with 2.5 sacks. That's what you want from him. That's why you brought him in. And you want to see him put that together more consistently. And then finally, the wide receiver core, we finally saw RJ Maryland get a touchdown. I'm sure that was a special moment for him to catch the ball in the end zone and kind of get that feeling back. I think it was, a big score in the grand scheme of things, kind of put the nail in the coffin on Missouri State. But then, you also got to see why people were so excited about Yamir Knight. I mean, guy is slippery. He had a big punt return. He had some big plays, but he is really, really shifty. And if they can get him going, man, it's going to be a huge deal for him going forward. And especially with Jordan Hudson out, I still think very questionable for TCU. Wasn't close to playing today, had the brace on, but you had Romello Brinson, who continues to make big plays. He also continues to take penalties, crackback block, and is a personal foul and negated. I'm pretty sure negated a big play too. I could be wrong on that, but I think it did. And those are things that just can't happen. And so, again, with the penalties, but overall, I think this receiving core you're starting to see a lot of the flashes as to why there was some excitement about fresh blood. There's an excitement about changes with that receiving core, and all of this is happening without Jordan Hudson. Kevin Jennings finishes 24-36, 67% completion percentage, 281 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Threw the ball for 50 yards in the second half. If my 45 yards in the second half. So not great there, but SMU really put its nose down as far as running the football. They ran for 107 yards in the second half. They really controlled, the line of scrimmages in the second half. And those are things you can build off of and kind of go from there. But yes, we covered the turf, and Rhett actually talked about it in his post-game press conference. So you can watch that on the board and get his full thoughts, which I actually thought was really interesting. So with that, I think I'm going to close it out. I'll end on this on the After Stangs Show presented by our friends at the Thomas Auto Group. We appreciate their support of the On the Pony Express podcast. Make sure you head up 75 in McKinney, check out their 4 dealerships: Ford, Subaru, Volkswagen, Mitsubishi. I'm going in on Monday, get the oil changed on the car. Really excited, get some work done there, and spend some time at the dealership. Great spot to work while getting your car serviced as well, so they can handle that for you guys as well. So make sure you guys do that too. But when you try to assess this team right now, today was ugly. Today was very ugly, and it was a game that, man, I'm just kind of surprised the way it went. I'm surprised by the first quarter. I'm surprised that the penalties mounted up as many as they did. I mean, like 130 yards of penalties is insane. And at the end of the day, SMU was the far better team. Like, you could just tell athletically, physically, those are all, like, when they were on, it shouldn't have been close. And that's what's frustrating about this team right now, is they have not been able to put it all together. And I think we will find out what we need to know about this team for the rest of the season, in a sense, next week in Fort Worth. And if you see SMU go out there and play the way they did in the first quarter against Baylor, and jump out on them and play physical and get off the field on 4th downs and make some game-changing plays and set the tone, that's encouraging. Then you need to see them go finish the job. If you see TCU run wild all over them in terms of the passing game, like we saw against Baylor, and TCU is able to do whatever it wants offensively, and SMU's in for a shootout, I think it's going to be a long day. I think SMU has to start fast and kind of jump up and play from ahead. because this is going to be a war, and you don't want to be fighting a war coming from behind on someone else's turf. It just really makes it difficult. And we'll finally have our assessment of who SMU really is, because I don't know. No one does. I don't think they're going to go over to Fort Worth and get up and blow a lead. I don't think TCU is going to blow them out. I don't think this is a bad football team. I think they're struggling with consistency. And maybe when we look back on this entire season, maybe they are inconsistent the entire time when we look back and it's like, wow, they let so many opportunities go and they finish up going to a bowl and they're, whatever, 6-6, 7-5. And we'll assess that then. And then you got to look at how do you get that inconsistency out of the program. Or we're going to see them do what they've done the last couple of years under Rhett Lashley, and they find consistency, they find the secret sauce, and they make plays, and they play the way they did for the 3.5 quarters against Baylor, which is leading the way against a Power 4 opponent. And I tell you what, it is Rhett Lashley is, more than earned the benefit of the doubt of many, many people. And if you don't by now, you're never going to be a fan of Rhett Lashley if he doesn't have your kind of trust right now, in my opinion. Like, you're always going to be somebody who questions Rhett Lashley and if he's the guy for SMU and all these things. But if they come out and don't have the game they need to against TCU, there's going to need to be kind of like some major changes as far as like who plays, who does this, who does that. That's a conversation for another day. But this team is talented enough to beat them. And that's what's been so frustrating to watch the first 3 games of this year if you're an SMU fan. So we're going to find out a lot about this team come Saturday, 11 a.m., bright and early in Fort Worth. So we'll be there to cover it all. We'll have Hayden Howerton this week. We'll have Jonathan McGill breaking it down as far as what they all thought about this win over Missouri State, 28-10. Look, go on the road. You get a win. That's all that matters at this point. Now it's about turning the page to what is the final battle for the Iron Skillet. So with that, hope you guys enjoyed this kind of all over the place scatter shooting After Stangs Show, but we will catch you guys this week with all sorts of coverage as SMU takes on TCU in the battle for the Iron Skillet. Thanks for listening, everybody. Hope you have a great rest of your Saturday night, and catch you next time.
Thanks for listening to the On the Pony Express podcast with Billy Embody. Follow us on your socials on X at SMU_on3 and on Instagram at On3SMU. And keep it locked to OnThePonyExpress.com for more coverage.